I tested the best Canon cameras, and I realized that each Canon camera is made for a very specific individual in mind, and unless you know exactly what to look for, you could end up with a camera that doesn't really work for you. The Canon M6 Mark II and the Canon 90D are pretty much the same camera on paper, but there's some key differences that completely change how you use the camera. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the best Canon camera for you, whether you're a casual photographer, a serious video shooter, or anything in between. The Canon 90D has one of the highest resolution sensors that you can get in a DSLR. Along with its phenomenal design and features, it's a camera that's great for both casual users and professionals. Also, if you want to check out the Canon 90D, I'm going to leave links down below for the best pricing for the Canon 90D along with all the other cameras that we talk about today. The Canon 90D has a 32 megapixel sensor where most cameras only have about 20 or 24. It gives you incredibly detailed photos and it shoots in 14-bit RAW, giving you an insane amount of flexibility when it comes to editing your photos. And it also shoots in 11 frames per second, which definitely makes the Canon 90D a sports and action camera. The Canon 90D also has really good autofocus that will keep up with your fast-moving subject because it has intelligent subject tracking for both photos and video. Now, Canon is known for holding their cameras back when it comes to video, just so you have a reason to buy the more expensive cameras. But the Canon 90D is one of the few cameras that does not do that. The 90D shoots gorgeous 4K video at 24 and 30 frames per second without dropping quality or cropping into your sensor. And if you're like me and you love slow motion, the Canon 90D also shoots slow motion at 60 frames per second in full HD and 120 frames per second for 5 times slow motion, also in full HD. However, there is one teeny tiny problem. When it comes to video, the 90D only shoots in 8-bit color, where a lot of the newer cameras coming out nowadays actually have 10-bit color, which give you more flexibility when it comes to editing your colors for video. If you're a casual user, you really won't care, but if you're someone that's pretty serious about video, I do recommend checking out one of the later cameras in this video that does 10-bit color. One of the major reasons that people pick up the 90D is because it's a DSLR, and having a DSLR comes with a lot of advantages in body and design. A DSLR offers a really solid, robust body with a nice deep grip. It's a really satisfying experience to shoot with a DSLR. Plus, you get the same spectacular menu and button layout that you have on any professional camera, making it really easy to use. And it also has an LCD screen right at the top of the camera, so you can see all of your settings at a glance, which is of course a pro feature. But as I mentioned earlier, there's also the Canon M6 Mark II. The M6 gives you the same power of the Canon 90D, but in a small compact body that completely changes the way you use it. The M6 Mark II is much better for casual users that always want to have a camera on them without having to lug around a big chonky DSLR. And the M6 Mark II also has a completely different lens mount. These lenses are more affordable, but they're not really pro lenses. They're really for casual photographers, so they're cheaper, but they don't have the same high quality. But you can use a $99 adapter to use the same EF Pro glass that the 90D can use. But once you add the adapter and the bigger Pro lens, you pretty much end up with the same size as the 90D, and I would say you're better off with the Canon 90D instead of the M6 Mark II. The M6 also has slightly faster shooting rates at 14 frames per second versus the Canon 90D's 11 frames per second. The M6 Mark II is a really good camera for casual run-and-gun photography. Both the M6 Mark II and the 90D are powerhouses. It really just depends on what kind of shooter you are. And if you're someone that wants a compact camera with a lot of horsepower, you're actually better off looking at one of Canon's newest mirrorless cameras, the Canon R10, because it's just about the same price, but does a lot more. And as I was making this video, Canon just announced a brand new full-frame camera that I'm also putting on this list, so you don't want to miss it. The Canon R10 is a surprisingly compact camera considering the ridiculous amount of horsepower and features it has. It's really the perfect casual camera, but it can also be used as an everyday carry camera for a professional. The ergonomics on the R10 are exactly like a DSLR, so you get the same buttons and dials and features that you would normally get on a pro camera, with a side articulating screen that also allows for touch autofocus. One of the really exciting things about the Canon R10 and the new mirrorless lineup is the fact that it also has Canon's dual pixel autofocus number 2, which uses AI tech to intelligently track your subjects because it knows if it's looking at a person, animal, or a car. But what's inside the Canon R10? It has a 24 megapixel APS-C sensor, which is 10 megapixels less than the Canon 90D, but it does everything the Canon 90D does, but way better. It shoots photos at 15 frames per second. In electronic mode, it shoots at 23 frames per second. And in raw burst mode, when it only shoots raw photos, it shoots 30 frames per second. That is as fast as video. It is impossible to miss your shot with the Canon R10. And video is just as impressive, but there's two minor things that hold the Canon R10 back. It shoots gorgeous 4K video in 10-bit color at 24 and 30 frames per second, and it looks spectacular. It has 4K HQ mode, which is actually 6K, downsampled to a much more manageable 4K file, so you get the goodness of 6K, but in 4K. The Canon R10 also does 4K at 60 frames per second for 2x slow motion, but there's a small problem. In 4K 60, it actually crops in / zooms into your sensor, reducing image quality, but it also makes your shot just a little too close up. On top of that, the Canon R10 does not have C-Log, which is kind of a feature you want at this price point. But it does have 10-bit color, so you can really go in there and tweak your colors when it comes to video. You just won't have the same dynamic range. So if you're a pro user, I actually recommend spending a little bit more money and getting the Canon R7, which is 100% worth the upgrade. It has a 32 megapixel APS-C sensor, which is the same sensor from the Canon 90D, plus you get 4K at 60 frames per second without any crop, and you get C-Log for additional dynamic range, and you can really go in there and really fine-tune the look of your video. And another added bonus is that it also has image stabilization built right into the sensor, so when it comes to video, you get really smooth handheld. The body of the Canon R7 and R10 are pretty much the same. There's minor differences that you won't really notice. If you're someone that wants a compact, everyday camera and you're really about your photo game, the Canon R10 is a great choice. And if you're also serious about video, for a little bit more, the Canon R7 is super duper worth the upgrade. Not only do you get a higher resolution sensor, but you get much better video frame rates. But before you make your decision, Canon just announced a brand new camera that does everything the R10 and the R7 does, but with the new features never seen before in a Canon camera. And it's the exact same price as the Canon R7. So let's check out Canon's newest camera, the Canon R8. The first thing you'll notice about the Canon R8 is that it has a 24 megapixel full frame sensor. A full frame sensor is about twice the size of a regular sensor, but because you have a bigger sensor, you're able to capture more light, more detail, and your images are going to have a very cinematic movie-like quality because the bigger sensor also gives you a wider field of view. Full frame is pretty much what every professional videographer and photographer uses, and this is the first time that I've seen a good full frame camera available at this price. When it comes to photos, the Canon R8 shoots way faster than any other camera on this list. It shoots at 40 frames per second in electronic shutter mode, and it can also shoot up to 120 photos before it needs a break. This is really good for super fast moving objects like sports, cars, or wildlife. This honestly makes it the best sports camera on this list. Now, there is a problem. All the other cameras on this list have mechanical shutters, which mean it has a physical shutter in front of your sensor. The R8 only has an electronic shutter. Electronic shutter mode really isn't ideal for studio and flash photography because you get these weird blurry lines across your image. But you can switch over to an alternate shooting mode that shoots at a slower 6 frames per second, but it doesn't give you any issues when using your electronic shutter mode, even with flash. But when you're in a studio, you really don't need anything faster than 6 frames per second. And the R8 also has Canon's newest autofocusing system, which uses AI to intelligently track people, cars, and animals, so it knows how to move the autofocus accordingly, and it absolutely keeps up with the insane speeds that these cameras offer. And the R8 also does everything the R7 offers in terms of video, except the 4K is downsampled from 6K. It offers 4K at 60 frames per second for 2x slow motion without a crop. It offers C-Log, and you also get the added benefit of having a full frame look to your camera. If you're a video shooter, I do recommend the R8 over the R7 if you want that full frame look. The only thing you're really missing out is the in-body stabilization, so handheld is a little bit tougher. But you get a professional style body with this camera because it's the same body as the Canon RP. For $1,500, this is the best video camera Canon has ever put out. However, the Canon R8 isn't perfect, and if you really want the best Canon camera out there, let's check out the Canon R6 Mark II because it's taken everything that Canon does really well and crank the awesome dial all the way to the max. And there's 3 key features that are really going to be game changers for both photographers and videographers. Off the bat, you'll notice it has the same 24 megapixel full frame sensor that you also saw in the R8. So you already know you're going to get high resolution photos and videos, plus that professional full frame look. What really takes the R6 Mark II to the next level is the fact that it has a mechanical shutter, but a ridiculous 30 frames per second raw burst mode, and it's even faster in electronic shutter mode at 40 frames per second. This way you get the best of the R8, the R10, and the R7 in one camera. What makes this really impressive is that the Canon R6 Mark II has a lot of the features that you have in the Canon R3, which is a $6,000 to $8,000 camera. And that also includes the new dual pixel autofocus, which was a big reason people bought that camera, including some of the video features as well. In terms of video, you get 4K that is downsampled from 6K, so you get the awesomeness of 6K, all the detail, but in a manageable 4K package. And it allows you to shoot from 24 to 30 to 60 frames per second without any cropping or drop in quality. And it also shoots full HD at 120 frames per second for 5x slow motion, but also 180 frames per second for 7.5 times slow motion. The features in this camera are really good if you're shooting commercials, high-end music videos, or any kind of cool content. But what makes the Canon R6 Mark II such a beast of a camera is the fact that when you have a really big project, something you would probably need to rent a high-end cinema camera for, you no longer have to, because the R6 Mark II actually allows you to shoot 6K raw ProRes externally up to 60 frames per second. So you no longer need to spend the money on renting some fancy camera with an insurance fee. You can do it all with your camera simply by using an affordable external recorder. And for this reason, I think the R6 Mark II is the best camera from Canon because it has the best value for your money. If you guys want to check out the R6 Mark II or any of the cameras we talked about on this list, make sure to check out the links in the description down below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.